Stop messing around, stop fooling around, stop delaying, stop procrastinating. Get up, get out, get it done. Everything is possible, nothing is a problem, and anything can be overcome. I just get my ass up out of bed, I get my shit together, and I get out and I start the fight. And that will transform you from a mere mortal into a superhuman being. I've never, ever, ever met anybody who told me that they got rich watching their IRA or their 401k.
Welcome to the Daily Cash Flow. My name is George Robson.
My name is Peter Siegel.
Peter, I was reading about an uptick in furnished turnkey residences, and I was wondering, have you seen that desire in potential tenants in your business?
You know, not in my business. I specifically cast a net for renters in the marketplace who are looking for long-term unfurnished rentals. I mean, that's what I do. Right. Portfolio-wide, categorically, that's what I do. I intentionally avoid furnished offerings or variations of a furnished offering. When someone in my business does a furnished or partly furnished rental offering, usually it's associated with short-term rentals or seasonal rentals. I just don't do it. I've chosen not to do it. I mean, it's a completely different business. I mean, it's rentals, but it's such a different business. Here's why. Banks don't want to lend on short-term or seasonal leases. I mean, that's a big factor right there. It's almost game over. It's so management intensive. Managing annual leases is already management intensive enough. I don't want more of it. So having multiple turnovers per year in the same unit would just eat up so much time and so much of our resources that it wouldn't make any sense for us. So if I can't get a bank to give me 70-75% LTV, and if I have to overspend at the SG&A level with my maintenance crews to do unit turns and repairs and maintenance, it's just not going to work. So I don't do it. I know a lot of people out there look for that kind of thing. The VRBO and the vacation rental sites have Airbnb have made all of that more popular and sexy over the past several years because they make it so that you can rent your house out or you can rent your second home and really not have it be a second home. You can really have it be a rental property, and you can manage rentals and applicants coming in from these websites, and maybe in 10 years it'll be a second home once you pay it off or something. I see a lot of people doing that. But for me, I don't see the demand there for me because I'm not casting that net. I'm not looking for that. Completely different business model. We have one project right now down the road from where we're filming this. It's an oceanfront project. It's a vintage building. I bought it. It's a 36 unit building. I purchased it about a year and a half ago. And I've been renovating units slowly and surely, and we're doing a renovation in that property where we're providing built-in cabinetry and storage with a Murphy bed system that pulls out into a desk and seating area, and it's non-movable. I mean, it stays fixed in the apartment. When the tenant moves out, that installation stays in the apartment. It's mine, I own it, and it's there for the next tenant to come in. It pulls down to a queen-size bed. The tenant simply needs to bring their queen-size mattress and put it on the platform once it pulls out. I mean, it's really cool. The reason I did that is because these units are in a superior location. The building was in great shape. It's got great amenities, parking, ocean views. The units are really small. So in my marketplace, I'm looking for renters to come in the $1,600, $1,700, $1,800, $1,900, $2,000 a month price range. And typically, our units in the portfolio are larger than what's at this building. So what I did to make it a little sexier and to make it a little more amenity rich and make the decision easier for people to want to come in and rent, I did two things. Number one, I took down the walls that separate the bedroom from the living area and kitchen, made it one big open space, and I am installing movable doors, 3 doors on this side, 3 doors on this side to form a movable wall that you can open into a loft-like environment. We're closed for privacy in the sleeping area. That's the first thing. The second thing is I installed these Murphy bed storage area, seating area combo units to make it an easier sell so that when we're showing apartments and people are having a tough time envisioning all their furniture fitting in a smaller space than they had expected, we have it sort of laid out for them already. So except for that, we don't really do furnished offerings. And I don't even count that as a furnished offering. It's not really furnished. It's a Murphy bed with seating and storage. So, and it's done with an intent and a purpose to try and compensate for the unit itself just having less square footage than our normal product does.
For those design choices, was that something that you had done before in other units, or what gave you the idea to do that?
I've never done a movable wall. I've always wanted to. And I've never done a Murphy bed installation. Never thought that I'd want to, but when I saw the units and I started laying it out with my project manager and my leasing team, and we were thinking of what the talking points were and the selling points were for these units in their to-be renovated state, we kept on coming back to how small they were, but how great the views are and how great and superior the location is. And there's parking and there's outdoor space and there's huge light and air spaces, big window openings that we've even made larger. And so there's a lot of pluses to this property, but the spaces were small, so we had to compensate somehow. So I always like to separate the walls between kitchens and living rooms and bedrooms and living rooms. These vintage buildings that were built in the 60s, 70s, and 80s were built with separate rooms. I mean, the modern lifestyles and modern apartment living is different today than it was 30, 40, 50 years ago, clearly. So back then, it was normal and preferable to have a separate kitchen in a room and a separate bedroom and a separate living room, all separated by walls in a small 700 or 900 square foot space. Today, people want open space. They're inspired by loft living. They're inspired by artist studios where everything is just all within the same premises, and you sleep there, you lounge there, you cook there. There's a separate bathroom, of course. So I was inspired to make these smaller units as open and as spacious as possible. And when I did that, I realized that by taking down the demising walls between the rooms, it created the space, but it also created maybe a layout challenge. So it was really like a small loft. So it was fun to do, and we're just finishing up our first batches of renovations now, and they're leasing rapidly, so I think it was the right decision.
It's really just understanding your tenant base and the desires that...
Well, look, I mean, we're not, this property is not going to be appropriate for families with kids, regretfully, just because the spaces are small, and they were one-bedroom units to start with. So the candidates for one-bedroom units in my market here are going to be singles and couples, no kids. Typically, the demographic that we're seeing coming in are 20s, 30s, young 40-somethings. They want to be by the beach. They want to be by the ocean, by the parks that are coastally located. This particular property is located within very close proximity to lots of restaurants and shops and things like that. So we know for sure that we're going to get a lot of that age group. We know that we're going to get people that are in a certain income bracket. And so we didn't need to have large spaces with multiple bedrooms here. Again, because we're getting mostly singles and occasionally some couples. You got to design your product for the target market, for sure. I mean, always, not in this building, but in every business and building and project, you have to know what your target audience is. And they've been appreciating and liking the Murphy beds and the movable walls. I mean, it's a really cool installation. When we have some pictures, I'll get them up and you can put them up on the screen. We can talk about this again. I'd like for everybody to see it. I'm pretty proud of it. Yeah. But it's been fun. Yeah, it's been a nice one. And the other part of my answer to your question on if I'm seeing increased demand for furnished rental offerings in my business is, I mean, it's an appropriate question. You've got this whole age group, the millennials and youngers, that are canceling everything, if I can hop on the cancel culture vernacular, and they're renting everything. They're renting apartments, which is great for me, but they're heavy on Uber. They're not owning cars. They're renting furniture. They're renting bed sheets. I mean, we're living in a culture where you can rent anything. These folks are renting bed sheets, linens, towels. I mean, I find it crazy. I would never rent bed sheets, but I get that people would want to, and there's a market for it, and there's someone figured out how to provide it and hopefully make some money doing it. I think they're probably the ones driving the furnished rental market that you were asking me about.
Do you think that will continue, that kind of lack of commitment, so to speak?
Yeah, the lack of commitment? Yeah. In a lot of ways, I think it is going to continue. I think for the long term, certainly for the foreseeable future, but I think for the long term, when you've got driverless cars and when you've got home ownership in a declining trend amongst young people, where renting the things that we consume in our daily lives is the better way to go because it frees up cash. Yeah, I think it's going to be a part of our lives and society for a long time.
So I love to talk about leadership, about management. It's something we've touched on before.
Good.
And I was wondering if we could kind of revisit it. And is there anything else that we haven't talked about leadership or management?
Probably a whole bunch that we haven't talked
about.
about.
Yeah, and so I was just wondering, is anything maybe even this week that comes to mind about recommendations, advice on leadership and management?
So this week, I do want to give a mention and a shout out. My nephew Ben, who's super successful at his job, he lives in the city, he runs a huge team, generates a lot of revenue, and he gave an interview to a publication and was asked the question on what does he do when managing and leading his team. And one of the things he came back at that I'm so proud of him for saying, and I loved it when he said it, I wish selfishly that I had thought of it and said it, but it was Ben, so I have to attribute it to him. But he said to always make time in your week to nurture, improve, and cultivate at least one person on your team.
What does that look like for you?
So I think for me, I spend a lot of time on asset management and asset level issues, and I've got a really talented team at the property management level handling the day in and day out and the daily blocking and tackling. I think for me it's important to give them an opportunity to see the end game. I'm always sharing with them what the end game is so that they can connect the dots and know and understand what their daily hustle is really all about. So for example, I like to share with my leasing team that it's so important to make sure that when we enter into a new lease or renewal that we're capturing the right dollar amount. If it's $25, $50, $75, $100, whatever it is, the amount of increase on the annual or semi-annual renewal, or if it's a new lease on a vacant unit, that we're capturing the right market rent, because ultimately that market rent shows up on a rent roll. That rent roll shows up on the desk of my lender. That lender takes that rent roll and plugs it into their underwriting model, and it generates the financing situation that I then enter into and commit to. And I have a mortgage on this building for 3, 5, 7, 10 years, whatever it may be, which is dictated almost entirely by the rent roll. So I like to share that the rent roll drives capital events, the rent roll drives asset and ownership level concerns and decisions, and I think that's a really powerful thing for me and my business.
So enrolling the team in that kind of pursuit helps them to kind of connect with it on a deeper level.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm always sharing. Again, we talked about Stephen Covey to begin with the end in mind. I mean, I think knowing what the end is in anything that you do, whether it's for me and my business or for you and yours out there, is so critical. You have to know where the goal line is, and that way you can get to the goal line. So I'm always sharing what the end game is with my folks so that they can just plot their path. And I think it's a healthier way to come into your work environment every day. You know why it is that you're doing what you're doing. Sometimes, going back to the leasing example, you could just get lost in the repetitive nature of renew, sign new lease, vacant apartment, get it rented, and the amount of energy that you spend on the document flow, the showings, the applications, the lead generation. I mean, it can all get repetitive, but I think when we talk about, in our leasing meetings, we talk about the end game and populating units with tenants so that we have a rent roll that looks a certain way. They have the aha moment, and that's an important thing for them. It's an important thing for me. I would hope they find that important as well.
Was that something that you always kind of connected the dots with as you were getting into this industry, or was that something that someone had to show you?
For me, I've always had an interest in knowing why it is we're doing what we're doing. I had to know why I needed to bang my head against a brick wall day in and day out. I had to see where the ship was headed. I have to know what the target is and what the goal is. And we've talked about stuff like that before. So even when I was younger and a kid with not a whole lot of experience and perhaps just starting off in my path and career, I found myself always interested in what the end game was. That way I could I could adjust and tweak my daily grind so that I could get there faster and more efficiently. So 100%, you got to know what the end game is, and beginning with the end in mind is so critical. And just so as a leader of a team, any chance that I have to impart asset level lessons to the people that are doing property management, I always appreciate those opportunities, because I think it only helps them so much in getting done what they need to get done.
So I have a listener question. This is our...
From where?
This is from Twitter. I think this is our first Twitter question that we've exhibited on the podcast.
Why is that? Is Twitter populated with mostly older people, TikTok's younger people, and why are the
we've gotten questions before. I just haven't featured them on the
You just haven't bothered to ask me?
I've just been a mean guy with Twitter.
George.
So now we finally got one.
Give me the question.
It's a straightforward question. How do you spend your weekends?
How do I spend my weekends, or what's my advice on how you should spend your weekend?
How do you spend your weekend, Peter? But I think we could open it up to advice on how everyone should spend their weekend.
Well, broadly speaking, I don't have weekends. I mean, I have weekends, but I don't plan my life around a weekend. You've heard me talk about this maybe indirectly, but I'll be direct about it now. I'm always on. I'm always in my warrior mode. Even more so when I show up to an office or to an important deal or a meeting. But mentally, spiritually, I'm always on. So, and we've talked about working 5 to 9 in addition to working 9 to 5. So, that's me. I don't have weekends. I mean, I'm not showing up 9 to 5, going to a happy hour, partying a couple of nights a week, traveling with some buddies on the weekend. I mean, if that's what you're asking, I mean, I'm not like, check it out on the weekends and don't talk to me until Monday morning. I think if people are like that, and they want to be successful, they're going to have a hard time being successful. I tell everybody who wants to know, and I guess this listeners may be asking something along these lines, you got to hustle, you got to work your side gig, you got to hone your skills, develop new ones, develop a second, third, fourth income stream, start a new business, develop solid relationships, volunteer, gain life experiences. I mean, that's what I would recommend to other people on how to spend their time if they want to become successful. If they don't give a shit about becoming successful, then right. I mean, it's back to the self-awareness quotient that we've talked about so much together, you and I. If you're happy doing what you're doing, making whatever money you're making, and you don't want more money to invest, and you're sort of cool with where you are, and I mean, God bless you, you've won. If you're looking for more out of life, if you're looking for more of a path to becoming financially successful, I think your mindset has to be weekends, weeknights, weekdays. I mean, it's all sort of the same thing. Maybe on the weekends you do more relationship building and more life experience gaining, as opposed to just sitting on your ass playing video games, being hungover Saturday and Sunday mornings. I mean, all that stuff's fun. I recommend to people, everything in moderation, right? So you can go out and party once a week or once every other week or whatever, but if you're hitting happy hour 2-3 days a week and you're doing weekends and I mean, I don't know when there's time. You're working 9 to 5. I don't know when there's time for you to work your 5 to 9. Yeah, me, I mean, I work so hard all the time so I can carve out other blocks of time to do family stuff. And so what I do on weekends, I definitely work. What are you gonna do? Let's say you're in sales. You have a business, you own the business, you're a salesperson at a company, whatever your role is, but you're in sales. Phone rings at 5:30 on Friday night. Customer wants to place an order. What are you gonna tell them? Sorry, call me Monday morning. I'm out with friends at happy hour and then I'm going to dinner. Have a good weekend, click. Come on. Does that sound like something that's going to lead you to be successful? It doesn't to me. I mean, make the sale. I mean, I'd be like, hey guys, hang on. I'm going to go take this call and try and close a sale and step out and make sure I have the sale closed. I'll come back an hour later and play catch up with my friends if I'm at happy hour or whatever the situation is. But, so for me, I'm always ready to field that grounder and take those shots. And opportunity knocks, you never know when. And you have to be ready to see it and seize upon it. And if you're just busy doing other stuff, having a weekend, having a happy hour, whatever it is, you're just not going to be able to close on as many opportunities.
Yeah, and what it sounds like you're saying is that when you do close on those opportunities and you put in that extra work, it allows for other freedoms that you otherwise wouldn't have.
Completely. I mean, my business is on my mind 24/7. At some moments, it's on my mind less. At some moments, it's on my mind more. When I'm home and with my family, it's on my mind less. But I'm still on. I'm still able to engage if I need to. I mean, the calls come in, the emails come in at all hours, all the time. And if you own a business, or if you're a high performance person, or if you want to be a high performance person and you're on that path, the phone's going to ring and emails are going to come in all the time. You can't tell people to just wait for you for a week until you get back from your big party bus ride. It's just not going to work. You're never going to advance.
I'm going to cancel my party bus appointment this weekend.
Yeah.
This actually kind of connects to the listener question a bit. You talked about self-awareness. Is there such a thing as being too frugal?
Too frugal? No. That's completely subjective. And I think what drives that question for everybody is, what do you want, right? Your self-awareness statement. What do you want? Do you want money to be able to invest? So spend less or make more. It's simple math. You're not going to be able to invest and get on your path to buying buildings, opening up a business, having capital to invest in things, unless you have the money there. So you're either going to have the money by making more money at your job, which I recommend, or spending less, which I recommend also. And it's really just simple math. I mean, if you're not looking for the money to give you the ability to invest or start a business, then you're cool, and be frugal or not, or whatever your case may be. But you got to make the decision just based on math. I mean, if after earning your income, paying for housing, paying for medical, paying for transportation, paying for food, clothing, necessities, things like that, you have some money left over to invest it. That's great, and keep doing it. If you want more, figure out ways to spend less or make more. Work that side hustle. But I don't think you can be too frugal. I mean, I think it's a short-sighted way. I mean, it sort of implies that if you're being too frugal, then you're missing out on life, or missing out on doing other things. Be what you want to be, frugal or not, as long as you have the money that you want to do what you want. It's math. If you want more money, make more, invest more, or spend less. Those are your three choices. If you don't want more money, God bless. But I think you're addressing the question to me in a way that you're thinking about people that are looking to perhaps save or invest, because we've talked about that. I mean, you got three ways to deal with money: make more, invest more, spend less. Design a life that works for you.
Yeah, simple, straightforward.
Yeah.
We talk about pandemic quite a bit, and a lot of times, I think I often refer to it, and it's all bad all the time. It's just a bad thing. And the other day, you mentioned how we should really be viewing some of these things for both sides of the coin, not just looking at
everything
one,
needs
one
to be
way.
viewed
Yeah.
for both sides of the coin.
I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
Well, so everything has two sides, if not more. And I think we talked about it in reference to anticipating and how to anticipate. And I said, play out all the possible scenarios. Yeah. Well, review all sides of the coin. You mentioned the pandemic. That's just an easy example to talk about because we're in the middle of it right now. But clearly the pandemic it's a fucked up time in our lives. It's been horrible for so many people, health-wise. People have died. People have lost businesses. People have lost their jobs. So clearly that stuff's going on, and it's horrible. What could possibly be the other side to that coin? Perspective will dictate that there is another side, and it might be a little different. We spoke recently about all the restaurants and small businesses that are going to unfortunately close up and go out, and it's going to leave a glut of commercial space on the market, much of it already fixtured out and outfitted with equipment and utilities that could really just be used as another restaurant very, very easily. What's going to happen is that glut of space is going to come on. The cost of entry into owning a restaurant is now going to go way down because rents are going to be low. And instead of building out a full space, you can just take over a previously built space, and maybe you spend a 10th or a 15th of what you would normally spend to do a full build out, and boom, you've got a restaurant and you're open for business. That's a silver lining. That's the perspective that's on the other side of the coin. The pandemic's bad, but it's going to pave the way for all sorts of new opportunity. Another example is that while the pandemic's been bad, there's been a lot of sectors, businesses, individuals, areas that have been flourishing, believe it or not, right? I mean, I think we all believe it because we see it. You know, Apple has doubled in value since the pandemic started. I mean, so that's just one example. There's many.
Yeah, Best Buy and Walmart have also had, great.
Right. I mean, think of the supply demand. We talked about how supply and demand governs everything. Think about where the supply and demand waters have been flowing since the pandemic started. It's easy to identify the bad stuff, and I don't want to downplay that or minimize it because I know it's affecting all of us in a lot of different ways and important ways. You know, so George, to use a very grim example, if there's 200 people on a plane and that plane is taking a nosedive and it's going down, the perspective's the same for everybody on that plane. Like, unless you have a death wish, which probably no one does, but it's safe to say that all 200 people would agree that that situation sucks and it's bad and there's no other side to that coin. But for that, I think that there's multiple sides to all of the things that happen in our daily lives, pandemic or no pandemic, upswings in economy, downswings in economy. I mean, the more you are in tune with all of the various perspectives that exist in a situation that's happening, the more successful you're going to be. We're all in lockdown. Families are on lockdown together. I mean, it's crazy. People aren't going into work. We're being parents and teachers and playmates with our kids. But I mean, to me, that's been part of what the other side of the coin has been for the pandemic while it's been happening. I mean, I've gotten to spend this great time with my family that normally I'd be in the office, traveling, working, doing my typical annual routine, which is on pause right now. So I appreciate that. As difficult as this time has been, I appreciate the time with my family. And I think the more that you can see these different perspectives and appreciate these perspectives, you're going to be happier, you're going to get through tough times better, you're going to be able to plan and strategize on where to move and pivot to next. But there's always multiple sides of a coin, and seek out what all the different perspectives are, because that's what your competitors are doing, that's what your peers are doing, and if you want to be successful and get through tough times, if you want to be successful and get through normal times, step up and figure out what all the perspectives are. You're going to sell more, you're going to manage better, you're going to perform better, and you're going to feel better.
You were telling me about a story, actually two stories, about buying and selling some properties.
Right.
And I was wondering if you could share with our listeners about that.
Right. I mean, that was a bit off the cuff. I mean, for our listeners, I want to share with you that if you're buying or selling anything, markets require that buyers be ready, willing, and able. I mean, those are the three key factors that both sides of the table have to have. Without that, you've got inefficiencies and things are going to be messed up and pricing's not going to be right, terms aren't going to be right. Everyone's going to be trying to compensate for the area that isn't present, readiness, willingness, or ability. Any of those aren't present, you've got problems and difficulties to overcome. So, in my business, George, I buy these apartment buildings. Often I'm buying from long-term owners, and they have other ancillary properties that aren't really related to the apartment building that I'm purchasing, but that they'd like to also sell. They're moving out of the area. They don't want to be around anymore. So often I'll get the call, hey, Peter, buy my apartment building, buy my house, buy my kid's house, buy my grandma's condo down the road, buy this vacant land that my grandfather got 100 years ago that we never did anything with. And so I say, okay, great, because really what I want is the apartment building. But in order to get to the apartment building, I have to sort of take everything off their hands and be a one-stop shop solution for them. Mm-hmm. And it happens all the time. I mean, it's inevitably, once a year, I get this scenario for the past 20 years, more. So I've got all this ancillary non-core property that I've got to figure out what to do with. I mean, it's not really an apartment building. It's not really part of my daily and weekly conveyor belt of management systems. So I usually sell it, and when I go to sell it, I engage a local broker, we'll put it up, just want to get fair market price and move on. So George, what we had recently that I was telling you about, we had a buyer saw a listing that I had for sale with a broker locally for a house, 5-bedroom house in our area. I don't need the house, so I'm selling it. It's on the MLS. Buyer's looking, he's in the market. He lives 5 hours away in southern Maryland. And he calls my broker and he says, well, look, I'm only going to offer this much money, not a penny more. I mean, it was like 20% less than the asking price. And I'm not driving up here unless the seller tells me now that he's willing to accept a price like that. So the guy was making an offer without making an offer, and it was a complete waste of time. I mean, so here's a buyer that I don't know how ready he is. I don't know how able he is because I haven't assessed his finances. He didn't have a pre-approval for a mortgage. And I don't know how willing he is. So he sort of lacks in all three of those areas. I'm a ready, willing, and able seller. The property's listed. I've got an asking price. And here this joker wants to secure a showing appointment to come see the house by confirming with the seller that I'm willing to take a shitty lowball offer first. I mean, it was a weird way to go about it. I don't know why he chose that, but it was laughable. I didn't even respond, and we moved on and showed the house a bunch more and finally got the right offers and sold the house. So my point is, if you're a buyer, it's a game. What he did to me was playing games. Don't play games. I mean, it's stupid. What does he think, that he's gonna float a lowball offer, get a verbal confirmation on a lowball offer, come up, see the house, then put in an official offer that matches his verbal lowball, and then we're gonna close? I mean, it's just not gonna happen in any world. And so I encourage people to be educated about what you're doing, be educated about the process, use buyer and seller agents. Don't go about it on your own if you don't have the experience. I don't know what experience this guy had, but for him to make an offer that wasn't really an offer, all it did was turn me off, and it shut the door in his face. And there was another situation that happened just this past week, not with one of my properties, George, but with a property that a friend of mine was looking at. Went in to go make an offer. The offer was accepted with the following contingencies. The seller came back and said, "We'll accept your offer, but we need an open-ended closing date because we can't sell you the house until we have found something else to go into that suits our needs. And so let's go into contract, and I'm not going to commit anything to you, and you just have to drag along with my hopeful search for a new home. And if I find something great, I'll sell you the house. If I don't find something, I'm not going to sell you the house." I mean, what's the point of having a contract at that point? So it was so weird. Here you had a ready, willing, and able buyer. Your seller was not ready because they needed to sell this house to go into the next one, so they needed the money. They couldn't wrap up both at once. So he wasn't able because he needs the money from the sale of the first house. And he was willing to do sort of something, but not really a normal thing. So it's just weird. I mean, if you're gonna sell, be a seller. If you're gonna buy, be a buyer. If you're gonna fuck around, you can fuck around, but the world's a smarter place now. With the internet, with the availability of information, I mean, there's no way to shortcut buying and selling. If you're gonna sell, list your property, market the property, get bids, do a bid review. If you're gonna buy, engage a broker, go online, get some information, see what's available in the marketplace that meets your criteria, and make offers that match what the market's doing. The sellers aren't gonna give a buyer seller financing. In any real market, it's just not gonna happen. Don't waste your time. I mean, if you live in the swamps of Shkapatapank, wherever, maybe you'll find a seller that'll hold back financing or take paper for you, but otherwise, just don't even waste your time. And if you're gonna be a buyer, go in with a strong offer, go in with strong terms. Put a big amount of down payment down and don't finance 90 or 95% of the purchase. I mean, it's just weak. You're not putting your best foot forward, and there's gonna be other offers. They're gonna be stronger than yours in 10 seconds. If you're a buyer, come in with a high amount down, come in with a low amount of contingencies, get your inspections done quickly and move on. I mean, the quicker you can close, the more certainty you can give your seller that you're the one who's gonna perform and close, you're gonna get the deal. At least you're gonna be more likely to get the deal. But when I see people fucking around out there with these weird terms and I mean, it's no way to behave in a marketplace. And all you're doing is wasting time. I mean, the brokers are gonna take your listing as a seller because that's what brokers do. They want the listings. They figure they'll just sign you up and deal with whatever mess in Michigas you provide them later on. I mean, this seller that I was just mentioning, I mean, they have to sell their house before they get the new one. We see that all the time. I mean, that's not new. But what they should consider doing is doing what the rest of us do in the whole planet, which is list your house for sale, secure something to purchase that you're going to move into. If you can't line up the timing of the sell and the buy, and it's difficult to do that, go into a rental for a year and then continue looking on the market. But if you're going to sell, sell. But you can't sell and then not really sell, but then take it off the market, but go into a contract with you and then not really deliver on that contract because I need the money to go into this thing, but I don't want to rent, I need to purchase, and it's got to line up perfect. I mean, it's too difficult. You're making too many challenges already, and we haven't even gotten to listing your property yet, right? So
ready, able, and willing.
you got to be ready, willing, and able. You got to have all three, and both sides have to have all three. Otherwise, it's just going to be a mess. Now, maybe you can find some value if you're a sophisticated buyer or sophisticated seller. Maybe you'll find some value in those waters if there isn't ready, willing, and able on both sides, because sometimes that can provide for some opportunity and some inefficiencies that you can capitalize on. But 99.9% of the time, for the bulk of the world out there, you need both sides of the table to be ready, willing, and able. And if they're not, it's just going to be a mess.
So Peter, are you ready, willing, and able for Zest Quest?
Oh man, I am ready, willing, and able, and I'm not going to shortchange you or beat around the bush or drag things out. I'm not going to capitalize the microphone time and talk about other things to avoid answering the Zest questions. I'm just going to really just let you ask the question, and whatever comes out, I'll be totally honest and forthright. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm not going to delay the clock so that we just have to stop and you never get to asking me the question. George, I wouldn't do that.
Peter Siegel's filibuster of the day. Yeah. All right. Well, Zest Quest 1.
Thank you.
If you had to give advice to your childhood self on how to play better, what would that advice be? And if that child had to give you advice on how to work better, what do you think that advice would be? So it's a two-parter.
Play. So how to play better, like fun play?
Yeah.
Play hard, play to win. I love being competitive, so I like winning, but in a sportsman-like way, so to speak. But play hard, play to win, be a gentleman about it, and enjoy the fruits of the win.
I like that.
And
then what would childhood Peter Siegel say to adult Peter Siegel to give him advice on how to work better?
Don't take everything so seriously all the time, and find the moments when you think that they're so serious, laugh at them a little bit. Not too much that you're offending others around you, but find the ability to laugh a little bit when the rest of the room is not laughing. You'll stand out, you'll break the ice. I think that's what I found, and I think my younger self would say that to me.
So a wise child.
Yeah, well.
And last question for today. What's one thing that makes you feel like there is certainty in life? And then what's one thing that makes you feel like everything's always changing, blurs all the lines?
The one thing that makes me feel that there's certainty in life is humanity. I look at humanity, I look at people, and I see the goodness in people. It's always there. And I see the resilience of people. That's always there. And the one thing that I see that makes me feel like things are always changing is humanity. And I'm not trying to be cute, but really, humanity's changing so much. I mean, I'm reminded of this every day of my life. Even this morning, reading the newspaper, I'm reminded of it. I mean, look at where we are in our times right now. It's an election year coming up, so politics is at the forefront of the media, of all of our minds. Among other things, politics is there, right up there. And, you know, I remember a time when it used to be, we're all in this together, Democrat, Republican, whatever your stance was, and America is going to move forward, and we're all Americans, and we're all countrymen, and we're all sort of in the same ship. And now it's not really like that. It's like a brutal, bloody battle between the left and the right, and between me and you, and us and them. And the division in our country has evolved to such a place that, and I see that changing all the time towards the division side of the fence. And, you know, keeping up with that is definitely challenging. I'd like to see less of that kind of change, but the more humanity stays the same, I think the more it changes.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that may be the deepest thing that we've talked about on this podcast.
Please. Please, can we go back to the ridiculous stuff? Because I don't know that I do deep well.
Sure, yeah. I'll come up with some fart jokes for the next podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for your time, Peter. I appreciate it.
Thanks, George. Thank you, everybody.